Welcome to the Folk Hogan podcast, where we deep dive into all things Folk Hogan, talk about all the silly things that we do, talk with other band members, talk about songs, talk about shows, talk about all the stuff that is our silly little endeavor into the world. Chips, how are you?
I am good.
Good. Last episode, we talked about the Band of Mighty Souls trilogy, and today we're talking about No Means Jeff. This here song you're hearing right now. Man, what a fun song to play. For anyone that doesn't know, this here song is about Jeffrey Dahmer. Pretty terrible thing to write a song about. What did you think the first time you heard this song, Nick? If you recall.
I already knew what it was about, though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different.
I know a lot of people have heard this for the first time and maybe not caught on to all the lyrical content right off the bat.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not called the Jeffrey Dahmer song.
Yeah.
Or the Milwaukee Cannibal.
While we're on that subject, when we wrote this song, we didn't have a title for it. We had 3 contenders for the name of this song. One was My Friend Jeff. One was My Fiend Jeff. And then there was another one that I can't remember. And so we were talking about ideas for names for this song, and someone was like, you know what we should do is we should just flip a coin. And it was like, well, there's 3 songs. Let's come up with a 4th title and flip a coin and have a little tournament between the 2 songs and determine what we're going to name it. And so that other name that was brought up was No Means Jeff, which we all cringed and bristled at. We were like, no, that's a terrible name for this song. But then we flipped the coins, and No Means Jeff won, so we kept it. The backstory for writing this song was there's no secret when you listen through our catalog that me in particular, I'm a fan of songs that are pretty, that are about terrible things. I don't know if it's just my way of working through trauma or what, but like that's just what I like to do. I like to write songs that sound sweet and loving, but are actually about something sinister and dark. And so I wanted to write a love song. I wanted to write a love song that was really awful and about terrible things. And somehow I decided that the song would be about Jeffrey Dahmer. And the perspective of the song would be from Jeffrey Dahmer's perspective, trying to pick someone up at the bar and take them home, and not lying to them, but not telling them the whole truth. And it's, I think we accomplished that goal. This is the only time I've done this for a song. I did months worth of research before I wrote this song because I wanted it to actually be accurate to the things that Jeffrey Dahmer did, which was sad and scary way to go about writing songs. I'm a fan of true crime, but I never expected to do such an incredibly deep dive into such an awful thing in order to write a song. Because,
he was a monster. That's why they called him the Milwaukee Monster.
One of the things for me about the song that's always weird, before we get into the lyrical content, is when we recorded this for our album Behold, it was not long before that I had damaged my voice pretty badly. And so the version of this song that is on Behold is actually really hard for me to listen to. There's a thing that I sing, I think it's in the first or second verse, that every time I hear it, I remember what it felt like in my throat to sing that part and how much it hurt and how uncomfortable it was. And so I can't listen to the Behold version of this song. I have to listen to the single version that's on that you can find on streaming stuff.
The Warner
Brothers version, and
with the blue artwork.
Yeah, and my voice was much more recovered by like an additional 8 months by the time that I sang that. So I was much more comfortable for that one. But yeah, you can kind of listen close and you can hear my voice was having a hard time singing this song in the studio, singing any song in the studio when we recorded that album. That was a brutal one. But yeah, let's jump into the lyrics. There's a lot of pretty in-depth stuff, and a lot of it's of pretty graphic nature. So I'm just going to give that warning up front. I'm going to be talking about some horrible things that Jeffrey Dahmer did. And before I talk about how horrible that stuff was, I'd like to say that right after we wrote this song, I was at Thanksgiving dinner and pulled the mandolin out and was playing songs for the family and played this song. And my mom was like, "That is such a sweet love song. That is so sweet." And my brother-in-law was sitting across the table from me, and he was like, "Is that song about Jeffrey Dahmer?" And I was like, "Yes, it is." And my mom immediately went, "Why would you write a song like that?" So, yeah, and that is actually kind of the response I was hoping for out of that. Music is, after all, art, and I, want to write something that elicits a response, and not in a trying to be edgy type of way, but just in a make you think type of way. And the way I approached this song was after doing a lot of research on Jeffrey Dahmer, and reading a number of books and watching a bunch of documentaries and interviews and whatnot. The thing that sort of struck me was that a lot of the things that he did, there's no excuse for it. I don't want to sound like I'm sympathizing with him in any way. I was just trying to understand why he would do the terrible, terrible things that he did. And one of the things that was notable in a lot of the things that I learned was that he felt that he was unlovable. He felt that he was not able to be loved. And so with his twisted mind, he turned that into a lot of really terrible actions. And so that's what you need to know to understand sort of the perspective that the song is from, is this terrible person that is lying to people to try to get them to do what he wants them to do. He's trying to lure them in. So without further ado, we'll go through the lyrics and I'll lay it out little by little. So the song begins with him in a bar trying to convince someone to go home with him. "I love you and your pretty face. What do you say we go back to my place? Oh, beautiful, what do you think? I could fix you another drink." Now that's important. I could fix you another drink, because what he would do is he would get people home and he would fix them a drink that he would spike with drugs to knock them out. "Oh, darling, I want to take you home. I want to kiss your lips and bury your bones." And, that sort of "I want to kiss your lips and bury your bones" thing is sort of a one of those sort of like hopeless romantic things to say. But if you know the underlying story, it's actually a terrible, scary, awful thing to say. This whole song is sort of a look at those manipulative people in the world and in our lives that say what they want to say or whatever they think is going to get you to do the thing that they want you to do. My friends, they call me Jeffrey. They all live in my house. I try to bring a new one home whenever I go out. When they raided Dahmer's house, he had a number of corpses in his house. So they all live in my house. All my friends are there, right? Pretty terrible thought. I try to bring a new one home whenever I go out. He was a predator. He was out there with the intention to hurt people. You can call me Jeffrey, a plain and simple soul. I'll take just what I need from you and never be alone, because he's just going to keep you around. Really, really, really scary character. And again, I tried to write these lyrics to sound like someone was trying to be loving and persuasive, to sound like they would be a good partner. But when you know the underlying context, it's anything but sweet. 'Cause I'm a normal man with a factory job. Dahmer worked at a chocolate factory, I think is what it was. To pay his bills and keep up appearances. Trying to keep clean and pray to my God. Dahmer was religious for a time. He did attend churches, specifically with his grandmother when he lived there. He there's a video that his father once took of them like sitting in his grandma's house, and he remarks about how skinny Jeffrey is, and he's like, "What have you been eating?" And Jeffrey Dahmer's like, "Oh, I've been doing real bad. I've been eating a lot of McDonald's. I know it's not good for me. I know it's not a clean way to eat, but," without knowing that like what he was actually eating was people, victims. The next line, I want to put you on a throne. When the police raided his home, they found a book that he had a bunch of drawings in, and he had planned to create a throne made out of the skulls of his victims for him to sit on. So that's where that line comes from. I would give anything to make you moan. He would drug his victims, and he would pay close attention to what was going on with them. And when they started making noise or coming to, then he would typically kill them at that point before they woke up. If you feel a sense of unease, like I'm a wolf sharpening my teeth, don't be afraid to love me. Just close your eyes and breathe. There's not a lot to say about that. That is the kind of thing that can sound, someone can say something nice to you, and it can sound nice, but if you don't know their intentions, it can actually be a really, really dangerous situation. As I just mentioned, after he would drug people, he would typically lay his head on their chest and listen to their breathing. And he would listen to their heartbeat, and he could tell when they were starting to wake up. So the last chorus section, my friends, they call me Jeffrey. They say I have good taste, which is a little on the nose. But, again, he's trying to lie to someone without lying to them. I want to make you part of me. Let nothing go to waste. He was eating people. So you can call me Jeffrey. You're what I'm dreaming of. 'Cause after all, I'm just a man who is looking for love. Writing songs is an interesting thing. We pull we pull inspiration from a lot of places, and I don't necessarily want to say I was inspired to write the song because I, put a lot of research into it. So I don't think it was inspiration necessarily as it was determination. And again, I'd like to say that I don't want anyone to think that I'm in any way there. I think there's a lot of people out there that sort of have like a weird, I don't know, fandom for serial killers. As a true crime fan, I understand people's morbid curiosity with it, but the reality is these people are murderers, and they're awful, awful, terrible human beings who have taken the lives of people and affected them and their families and their friends and their acquaintances and their coworkers and the communities around them. And, I don't want anyone to think that in any way this song is like, trying to make light or trying to deify in any way someone who does these kinds of things. It's an honest look at that type of predatory behavior that some people have of just trying to create their victims and doing whatever they feel is necessary to get what they want without any thought of what other people have a right to or deserve. I have like weird mixed feelings about this song. I love this song because it accomplished the goal I wanted of writing a pretty song about a really terrible thing. But also it's also really dark. It's really awful. It's probably one of the worst songs I've ever written lyrically. Like, not that I think the lyrics are bad. It's just that the content of them is pretty awful and pretty heavy. But I do think that it's easy to pull out your pitchfork and torch and go after someone and think of them as a monster without thinking about the tactics that they used, how they accomplished those things, and understanding that there's a spectrum to that. Some people are going to have these like big, awful things that they're going to do that may not be as bad as killing someone, but they're going to affect people for the rest of their lives. But because it suits their needs, they're going to do it. And that's a spectrum. Sometimes it's a little thing. Sometimes it's as terrible as Jeffrey Dahmer. I wanted to talk about that sentiment of, the wolf in sheep's clothing, which, specifically is mentioned in the bridge. In the lyric, if you feel a sense of unease, like I'm a wolf sharpening my teeth, if something's wrong, don't worry about it. Like, I'm just trying to be a good person. And, we always have to be vigilant. We have to trust that the people in the world around us are good, but also we have to have a healthy amount of distrust to make sure that we keep ourselves and our allies and friends and family safe. But I do love the song, but I do have some real weird mixed feelings about it still all these years later. It's a pretty awful subject. Not that I haven't written about awful subjects before or since, but this is definitely the most graphic and awful of a song that I've ever written. One funny side story. Here at our band space, at Space Invaders, next door to us is the wonderful, incredible local punk band Racist Kramer. Remarkable band. They were asked to play a wedding a couple years ago, and the bride and groom gave them a set list of songs they wanted them to learn, and one of those songs was No Means Jeff, which, like, wow, you wanted that song played at your wedding. Okay. But also, like, so honored, and so we got to hear an extremely talented band next door to us learn that song and practice it for a while. And, we tried to help them where we could, not that they needed it, but it's fun to occasionally hear another band playing your songs. So yeah, that's the story of No Means Jeff. I hope nobody has any nightmares after hearing about all that. We were real bummed it didn't get picked up for any of the Dahmer shows. Not really. It's too lighthearted for any of that stuff, but I think that was part of the aim. So, Nick, what do you think of all that?
Whew, I mean, there's a lot to unload here with Jeffrey Dahmer being the subject of this, and I don't know why they didn't use it in the Netflix specials. And no, it's a really fun song to play, and it's a shocking subject, and it's very interesting art.
Yeah. Since Racist Kramer next door had to learn this song, there's some of you may have seen on occasion when we've played this song live, we've pulled someone up on stage and made them play the guitar parts. That's CJ, from the singer and guitar player from Racist Kramer. He took this girl on a date one night and took her to pipe her down. It's their first date, and he showed up to pipe her down, and we were playing. And he walked in, and he was like, "Oh, hey, I know these guys," and walked up. And right as he walked up, we had started the song. And so right when he got to the stage, it was almost the time for the guitar solo. And Nick just took his guitar off and handed it straight to CJ.
Yeah.
And CJ got on stage, played the solo, and sang the rest of the song. And then the song was over, and he got off stage. And the girl that he was with, Ashley, who's now been his girlfriend for quite some time, was like, "Did you plan this? Did you like work this out with this band beforehand so that like you could
like
impress me?" And he was like,
like
"No,
a cheesy movie scene."
Yeah. He's like, "I literally had no idea." But it's a fun song. A lot of people really like it. I mentioned playing it for my mom and her liking it and then hating it. My parents used to run a bluegrass festival down in Spring City, and we went down there to play it one year. And after we played No Means Jeff, a bunch of people went over to the merch table, which my mom was running for us. And we're like, "Oh, where can I find that song?" And my mom kept being like, "You don't want to hear that song. You should know what that song's about before you buy that song." I was like, "The money's not going to him. He did." So, yeah, pretty crazy song. That's another song that we sold to Warner Brothers and recorded in the Warner Brothers studio. Which, I may as well just jump into that a little bit since we talked about Band of Mighty Souls 2 last time. We got approached by Judd Marr, who was the VP of Creative for Nonstop Recordings here in Salt Lake, which was part of Warner Chappell. I'd known Judd for a long time. I didn't know what his job was. He was one of my customers at my job, and I was always telling him, "You got to come to a show. You got to come to a show." And finally he came and saw us at the Utah Arts Festival. And afterwards he came running up and he was like, "I got to talk to you guys. We need to have a conversation." And they approached us and were like, "Listen, we want to hear all your songs." So we sent them a bunch of recordings. They listened to everything and they were like, "Hey, we want to make a deal for a couple of these songs." And as I mentioned in the last episode, we talked at great length about whether we should agree to this deal or not. because we were essentially selling them 2 of our songs. And that was a scary thing because once you sell it, you never know where it's going to get used. We don't have a right to turn it down. So like some awful, terrible politician that we all hate could decide that they like that for the background music for one of their ads. We wouldn't be able to do anything about that. But as we sat down and talked about it as a band, the place we came to is like, look, we can still play these songs live. And though we technically are not owners of the songs, they're still our songs. We still have writing credit on them.
Yeah, and
it was a good opportunity.
It was a publishing deal.
Yeah, it was a really good opportunity.
So they would own the publishing rights to those 2 songs, but it doesn't stop us from playing them. And at the end of the day, it didn't stop us from writing new songs.
Yeah.
And they weren't going to control the band or tell us who to date or, what to wear, or it didn't. It was limited scope to those 2 things. Plus, we were going to get this really great opportunity to go re-record them in this world-class studio.
Yeah, to give people an idea, like when you walked into the building, they had the main hallway just had posters of movies that they had recorded the soundtracks for in that studio. And like right when you walked in, it was like Forrest Gump, The Fifth Element, Star Wars. Like, it's just like, oh, we're in a different league right now. This is weird. Definitely some imposter syndrome stuff going on there. But yeah, we talked about it at great length. I'm sure you remember we had like a ton of band meetings about it, and everyone molded over, and we all decided to go for it. And I mean, just for the experience of recording in that studio, it was worth it.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a great time.
It was remarkable. We did. There's a wing of that studio. It's now that building's now owned by the Arts Council,
Utah Arts Alliance.
Utah Arts Alliance. That's what it is. And but the back studio was actually built for Carole King back in the day. The Carole King was like in like the late 60s was into a bunch of drugs, so they sent her to Utah to clean her up, and they built a studio for her to record in.
Heroin hipster friends.
Judd also told me that Eminem recorded in that room as well.
That's pretty cool.
Just as Carole King to Eminem. That's something else, man.
And it really did. It was, they pulled in the top interior designers at that time and all those things, and so it really looked like somebody had finished that studio in 1970 and
shut the door,
and then just shut the door and turn the key. Yeah,
it was unchanged.
Really and touring room. The facility in itself was very interesting because it was 100-year-old. Originally, it was built as a Mormon church, and then it became a homeless shelter after the building was sold. It became owned by not Red Cross, but similarly sounding entity. And then, eventually it got turned into that recording studio. So there were still elements of the main chapel for the church, but there were also, things like areas where they had a bunch of hospital bed type scenarios, and they walked us all around and showed us all the different things. Judd's office was the old bishop's office.
Yeah.
And right off of the stage where a podium would be. And they had several live rooms and 3 control rooms, and everything was wired up to each different control room. So just a massive undertaking of a lot of analog gear to accomplish that at the time that it was put together, so that essentially they could put any artist in any of those rooms and not interrupt a recording session.
Yeah.
And so they had, people that were actively working on movie soundtrack kind of sounds. And they would frequently have rock bands in there and whatnot, but they would also have full orchestras in there and just constant music projects of all types of genres.
Yeah. I mean, it was bizarre recording because we recorded all of the instruments in the actual chapel.
Yeah. And they put a drum shield around, a temporary drum shield around the drums with 10-foot tall like plexiglass walls, and it was a bunch of wood panel kind of octagon type shape thing, so we could still see each other. And they kind of put us in a big circle, and endless supply of amplifiers and guitars and anything that you'd want. And
it was amazing.
And then they delayed recording the vocals because they were waiting on a really, really, really expensive vocal microphone.
Yeah, they ordered this mic, and they were like, "We're gonna wait to do vocals till we get this new mic in." And then I went in to do the recording, and I was like looking at the microphone, and I was like, "How much was this microphone?" And they were like, "It's a cheap copy of the one we would like to have." And I was like, "Well, how much is the one you'd like to have?" And they were like, "They're about $60,000 a piece." I was like, "How much was this one?" They were like, "It was only like $16,000. Oh man, that's a car. And I was thinking, like, is it really that good? And when I went up to do my first vocal take in it, I like had my headphones on, and I went up to the microphone, and I was checking my levels. I was all good. And then, they start playing the song, and I'm waiting for my cue to come in, and I took a breath. I just went, and the clarity in the quality of that microphone from me taking a breath was so clear that it completely caught me off guard, and I missed my cue. Just was like, whoa, that sounds incredible. And all I had done was breathe in before I'd even sang in it. Recording there was just such a bizarre, amazing thing. When after we had all the discussions and decided we were going to sign the deal, we all met at the studio to go in and sign it, and we went and sat down and kind of discussed some terms with them, and made the agreement. They said, "Okay, let's sign it." And so while they were passing it around for everyone to sign, I went out to my car because the rest of the band didn't know this.
This is so good.
But I had a like $400 bottle of champagne that someone had given me way before this, that I just like sat in my fridge forever.
What am I going to do with this?
Never going to open it, right? And I was like, "This is the perfect time." And so I came walking in, and like with this box, and opened it up and pulled out a bottle of champagne. And Judd was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "Well, we're signing a deal. We better pop some champagne." And he was kind of stunned. And so for a second I was like, "Uh-oh, I hope this is okay." I was like, "Is this all right?" And he was like, "I cannot tell you the number of deals that I've sat across the table and had people sign in my 50-year career of doing this. Never once has someone actually popped a bottle of champagne." He was like, "I am so excited for this right now."
So funny.
Working with Judd was incredible. He was so awesome. Working with Mark was awesome too.
Yeah, just really world class.
Yeah, exceptional.
World class talent.
Judd wrote jingles and
the Velveeta
all
jingle.
Sorts of stuff. I sent it to you.
Yes.
If you want to pull it up. Judd wrote a bunch of jingles, and I managed the music is up on the walls around there for things that they wrote and sold. And so I was just going around looking them up, seeing if I could find them. And this is one that Judd did. And this is Judd singing too.
Velveeta shells and cheese comes 2 more ways. Try bits of bacon, sizzling with real bacon. And Touch of Mexico with mild peppers and picante sauce.
Here comes my favorite part. Judd really belts it out here at the end.
Only we taste like this. Velveeta makes it the creamiest. Velveeta shells and cheese.
Oh, so good. Sometimes that just gets stuck in my head.
1990.
I brought it up. I pulled it up and showed it to him on my phone, and he was like, I have not heard that in 30 years.
How did you find out about the Velveeta
Yeah, so
jingle?
they had a lot of like the music that they'd written and sold for different advertising things just on the wall. And so I was just going around pulling them up and seeing if I could find them. And I think that was the only one that I actually found. But there were tons of them on the walls, these really old jingles that they had written way back in the day.
Because they would also get hired as a studio. They'd get a call up from, some other part of Warner Brothers, and they'd say, look, we want this song from this artist. We can't get it.
Yeah, can't get the licensing.
They won't give us license, so we need you to write something that sounds like this famous song.
Yeah.
And that was, they had a lot of stories about that.
Yeah. In fact, the one that
about them being close enough that, the actual artist.
Yeah. The one that he told us about was the song Wang Chung. Everybody Wang Chung tonight. Yeah. Warner Brothers couldn't get the licensing for it. So they asked their studio to do their version of it. And it was so good that the people in that band sued. And they actually had to like play the two side by side to show that it was not actually that.
Because they basically, in the lawsuit accused them of going and taking the tapes and making a very direct copy of it.
Yeah, which they didn't. They composed their own version that was close enough, and it worked out. But working with Judd was what an incredible musical mind that guy has. He was the guitar player for Donny Osmond in the 70s. And so, he's been in the music industry his entire life. Extremely talented guitar player and musician in general. Exceptional ear. And it was just an absolute delight to work with him. And just, it was such a bizarre experience to go and do that. It was so much fun. Such a memorable, crazy, cool thing to do. And it was certainly, we made the right decision doing that because it was an absolute blast. I'd do it again.
Yep.
Yeah. Heartbeat. It was a blast. And then that studio closed down. Judd was planning to retire and they were going to keep that studio going. And then COVID hit and everything shut down. And then there was that earthquake, and that earthquake damaged the building that they were in.
Yeah, there was a lot of brick that sloughed off.
And I lived like a block away. So later that day I walked over there and looked at it and I was like, oh, that's not good. There's like a chunk of the wall missing. And so I sent pictures to Judd and he was like, oh, that's not good. So he ended up retiring earlier than he had planned. Just because it was like, well, can't go in and work. Might as well just retire. I was going to anyways. And then they vacated the building, sold it to Utah Arts Council, and now they're doing all sorts of cool events. And if you get a chance to go to an event in that building is really cool. It's a really cool building. So.
Yeah, they did it all up for a party once. That Warner did. And had all of the local artists that had worked with them. They were all invited, and that was a blast.
Yeah, what a
really
cool experience.
Really, really cool coffee machine in their break room. There's a lot of, you just down to the coffee machine.
Yeah,
there were so many really, really neat things there.
Yeah,
they had a coffee machine that was like an earlier concept of almost like a Keurig, but it had a bunch of packets.
Mm-hmm.
and you would select what beverage you wanted to make, and then the machine would tell you which packets to put, and you could make like, these barista style coffee shop drinks.
I remember you saying that you had like one of the best cappuccinos you'd ever had out of it.
Yeah, it was in that category of super super high end, but also very hands off.
Yeah.
Basically the range of $2,000 to $7,000 before you get a full on Italian espresso machine.
Right.
And so, I've worked in a lot of hospitals over the years that had, and that, some of these industries take their caffeine very seriously.
Have to.
Yeah. And, a lot of things about working in a hospital are actually pretty chill and very organized, because there's enough pressure and stress without that. But, when it comes to coffee, each place would always have, the best thing that money could buy.
Yeah.
Because it was just another piece of equipment among other hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of equipment.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, story of No Means Jeff. A little backstory on the Warner Brothers thing. For those of you that are not aware, maybe you didn't see a post about it. We were recently on another podcast. Me, Cameron, and Casey went on the KW Judas podcast. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it a bunch of places, but we went on there. Glenn, that hosts that show, Judas, he's longtime friend. He and I played in a band called Devil's Country back in the day, and Nick and all of Nick's old bands played at the coffee shop that Glenn used to run. But we went on to that podcast and talked about a bunch of stuff. And while we have played snippets of the new album on our show, we actually played some full songs on that show. So go over, give KW Judas a listen. You'll find the Folk Hogan episode. We're the second to last one for their season this season.
Yeah.
And
there's so much good content on that channel too.
Yeah.
Like
he just uploads a ton of really cool local bands,
interesting cartoons, and because he's been a long time promoter in Provo, and one of the good ones, and has been putting on shows longer than a lot of us have been alive. He has this huge musical archive. Any band that came through there, he would get an album of.
Yeah.
That was almost like part of the agreement is he'd either buy it or the band would give it to it, donate it, whatever.
Yep.
And so the way that bands go, there's a huge archive of all of these musicians going back. I mean, he has there used to be a man named Art that was a really prominent musician, and he unfortunately got in a fatal car crash on the way back from Park City after a gig one night. And Art had been a musician for 20 years and had all these projects, and during COVID, Glenn was going back and archiving all of these albums and putting them on YouTube, full albums.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people that were part of Art's life, that's maybe the only way they have access to that music. And it's, it's really cool to see a lot of these acts, that have since stopped playing and releasing music and broken up, or like in this example, the person isn't alive anymore, so it's a really interesting archive.
Yeah,
a bunch of my old bands are on there, and probably a few of Moses's.
Glenn has been They're every scene has a few people in it that keep the scene alive. And Glenn has certainly been that person in Provo, not just by archiving stuff, but also being an exceptional musician. Remarkably talented.
And, somebody that would spend a good 10 hours a week of hard time walking around, hanging up flyers that they had done the artwork for, booked the bands for, created the space for bands to come in and play, and like very grassroots, very DIY, but in Squeaky Clean Provo, that was the whole music scene is the very few people that put that together.
Yeah.
And other venues and things would come and go, and there's been a few constants in that, including Corey Fox that started Muse Music, then opened the Velour.
Yeah.
And he was basically the artist development of a bunch of those bands that have gotten signed and exploded and gone international.
Yeah.
And, after he started the second venue, Muse Music continued to be a thing for another 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
Moved locations, lots of different owners, but all of the places that all of these musicians that hailed out of Utah County cut their teeth in a lot of these all ages venues, which it's a very, very near impossible business to run on a shoestring budget, but it's a critical element of any healthy music scene to have somewhere for people to actually play.
Yeah.
And when you're in the under 21 scene, because, Utah with our laws is very much split into 21 plus and 21 under. That's the incubator for all of these bands coming up and how they learn how to do everything.
Yeah. If it weren't for those people, none of us would have the opportunities that we have. So thank you, Glenn. Go listen to the KW Judas, Gumption City TV and Radio, I think is what their YouTube channel is.
And the whole thing was recorded on a mixer board I sold him in 2006.
Oh, look at that, man. Still
and
paying
he
dividends.
told me the story about all the other mixer boards that they've bought and they've failed, and that one's just continued to go and go and go. No credit of mine, just
Glenn's keeping it alive.
Just it happened to be the one piece of gear that has not failed.
So yeah, if you want to hear full versions of some stuff on the new album, right now that's the only place you can hear them until we start releasing singles, which will happen fairly soon.
Let's end on two quick rapid fire questions for you, Moses. What's the new album called?
Yeah, we named the new album. It is called A Full Moon to Guide You.
Oh,
yeah,
you heard it here first. And when's the release show?
The release show is April 12th.
Okay, so between now and April 12th, we are going to be all over the place. We're going to be in your ears. We're going to be knocking some doors 2 by 2, dressed up like Mormon missionaries. We're going to be just showing up at your work. We're going to be hustling tickets.
Yeah. Get tickets. Pickpockets. The Pickpockets, they're opening for us. Wonderful bluegrass band from here in Salt Lake City.
And does the band have like a website that they sell tickets on? That Folk Hogan band?
Yeah, folkhogan.com. You'll be able to buy your tickets there or from any of us individually.
Yeah.
Buy your tickets from me, not from anyone else in the band. That'd be great.
Yeah, there's a little bit of an internal competition.
Yeah, there's a friendly rivalry in the band to see who sells most tickets.
And everybody's goal is to try to keep up with Cameron.
Yeah.
Because he always kicks our ass so bad, but not this time.
Not this time.
I'm going to start with his family members.
As soon as I'm
going to sell Cameron's mom a ticket before he has a chance to go home.
Drive straight to Jim and Tammy's house. Please prepare for that show. We can't as I mentioned, as I've mentioned many times, like shows are only as good as the crowd that's there. And this is a opportunity for us to play all the newest songs for you, and have ourselves a rocking good time.
And it's gonna sell out.
Yeah, it will sell out.
We sold out the last 2 album release shows.
Yep. We
were very intentional about picking the size venue, and we know what we can do, and we know it's going to be amazing. So don't miss out on that.
Yeah.
Don't think it's going to be like every other Utah show where you could just walk up to the door.
Yeah. Because that probably
and there'll be 4 people inside.
Yeah,
these are shows that get sold out and they sell out quick.
Yeah, so please come to those shows. We are going to have 2 specialty beers. In the past, we've done 1 specialty beer for our album release shows. We're doing 2 this time.
Whoa, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we're partnering with Shades of Pale Brewery.
We love Shades of Pale.
We certainly do.
We love beer.
And
How did you know?
Beer. And we're doing 2 beers this time. We've always done a dark beer in the past. We're doing a dark beer and a light beer this time. But we only do a firkin, which is a half keg of each, meaning that you kind of have to show up early to get it. And the reason I say that is the last 2 times we've done this, that half keg has been empty before the opening band started. So if you want to try it, that's going to be probably your only chance, except we're in talks with Shades of Pale about doing a limited release of these beers.
Oh, that would be so cool.
You may be able to get them at their tap house.
I would just love one to sit on the shelf somewhere even.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could just look at it.
Super excited about all that. So excited to release this album. Let everyone hear the songs and tell us what they think about them. Again, if anyone has questions for us or wants to know anything, you're welcome to hit us up on Instagram or Facebook or wherever you can find to get a hold of us.
Call Cameron at work.
Yeah, call Cameron at work.
And say, I don't want to buy a ticket from you. I want to buy a ticket from Moses
That's
Nick.
right. That's right. Send an email to band@folkhogan.com, and in the subject line put podcast question, and then throw your questions in there. We'll answer them. Or if you throw in a voice memo, we'll play that and then answer it. Yeah, hear your own voice instead of hearing our voices all the time. Thanks for joining us. We love you guys so much. Thank you so much for all the support we've been getting for all these years. Love you all so much. Wish I could just give one big hug to everybody. So come to a show so I can give you a hug. You can find us January 10th at Aces High, playing at Prickfest. January 17th at ABG's in Provo with Molotov. They're a wonderful punk band. Love them. And then we're playing January 18th at Piper Down in Salt Lake for Luck of the Irish Night with Murphy and the Glant, or whatever they're called. They're our nemesis band. So come and throw tomatoes at them while they're playing with us.
And then we'll eat the tomatoes off of the stage to show how punk rock we are.
You promised it. Bye.
Guy, I confess that if you're leaving,
well then I guess you're gone, but I'm gonna find you and bring you home, 'cause there's a light that's in your